This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Basically, I kind of stepped back and I said, yeah, the mission, this is my mission. And by the way, as important as my work was for 30 years, this is even more important. So not only did I have a great mission, it was the most important mission of my life.
Caring for aging parents or other loved ones while working, raising children, and trying to live your own life? Wondering how to find the time for your personal health and happiness? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast, the show where real family caregivers share how to be happy and healthy while caring for others. Now, here's your host, family caregiver and certified caregiving consultant, Elizabeth Miller.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast, which is part of the Whole Care Network. If this is your first time listening, welcome. This is a show produced bi-weekly to help family caregivers integrate self-care and caregiving into their lives. We are also thrilled to be a part of the Whole Care Network streaming radio channel. So if you want to listen to that, download the app, the WCN streaming radio app, and you'll get the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast, a lot of other podcasts, and music and content as well. Is your company looking for a speaker for their employee resource group or an organization you're affiliated with planning an upcoming expo, conference, or caregiver appreciation luncheon? If so, consider passing along my name and organization as a potential speaker. I'm available as an in-person or virtual speaker and enjoy connecting with family caregivers and fast-tracking them to support and resources. I'll link to my speaker page, which includes a speaker demo video, in the show notes page. I'd like to thank our episode sponsor, Rare Patient Voice. Do you want to earn cash in exchange for your opinion? Rare Patient Voice, or RPV, helps connect researchers with patients and family caregivers for over 700 diseases and conditions. For patients and caregivers, RPV provides the opportunity to voice their opinions to improve medical products and services while earning cash rewards. Rare Patient Voice, helping patients and caregivers share their voices. If you're interested, join the RPV panel at rarepatientvoice.com/happy healthy caregiver. For this episode segment of What I'm Reading, I recently read a book called Circe by Madeline Miller, and it was a recent book club pick of ours. This was really different than any of my other kind of regular picks, which is why that I enjoy going and being a part of my book club for so many years, as it helps get me outside of my normal reading zone. Circe is a fictional read about Greek gods, essentially. I did take Greek mythology as a college course, and I struggled with it. I kind of struggled with this book too. I like the main character, Circe. She's a daughter of a Greek god, Helios, and the nymph, Perse, who discovers herself throughout the story, but much of the story is spent really in her own solitude. I also appreciated the research that the author did, and I found the secondary cast stories just to kind of be too much. I felt like maybe the author was trying to put a lot into one book, and it was making it hard for me to keep it all straight, kind of like how I felt back in my Greek mythology class in college. There were some terrific takeaways about female power, unlikely friendships, and just overall a messy life. If you like Greek mythology, this book is for you. For me, though, I did give it 3 out of 5 stars. My favorite thing that I want to share with you this week is, and I was a little bit skeptical about this one, but this product has me hooked, frankly, and that is my Kindle Paperwhite. I was skeptical because I'm already a paper book reader and I'm already an audiobook listener. Did I really need one more platform or method to consume these words of art? But my kids got me this Kindle for Mother's Day this year, and what I really have been enjoying about it is that it's given, me more opportunities to read, like situational options to read, and Kindle is just kind of part of that. So if I want to read in my bed while my husband is sleeping, I have a lightweight way to bring multiple books on vacation now, which is great. I can read poolside or beachside, and there's no glare because of this Paperwhite. Books are also more affordable on the Kindle platform. So if I don't want to wait for an audio version of the book from the library, the Libby app, say for my book club book, this gives me another way that I can put a hold on the Libby Kindle version, or I can just simply buy the Kindle book outright from Amazon and save some money. I did prefer, originally I got the version with the ad on the front, but I paid $20 through Amazon, and it was worth it, frankly, because I wanted to actually see my digital book cover on the outside of the Kindle. I'll link to it in the show notes page. Let's meet today's caregiver in the spotlight. Meet Mark Wilson, a former senior leader at Taco Bell with a focus on organization and people development. After retiring early to care for his mom, who lived with mixed dementia, Mark embraced the role of a care leader. Combining his corporate HR skills with his caregiving journey, he developed a dedicated care mission, hired and retained top-notch professional caregivers, and became a passionate learner about dementia care. In this episode, we are also going to be delving into Mark's new missions since his caregiving duties have ended, and explore how holy moments and the mood elevator have shaped his daily life. Enjoy the show. Hi, Mark. Welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate being here. Thank you so much.
I'm excited to chat with you. I think we originally got connected through LinkedIn. I appreciate the people who kind of comment and engage on my stuff. And I think that's originally where we got connected, and I've learned more about your story there. And now everybody else is going to kind of learn more about your stories too. But before we kind of get into all the good stuff, Mark,
Okay.
I'd like to get people's thoughts on whatever we're pulling out here from the Happy Healthy Caregiver jar. So this is like a PDF of inserts that it's a product I have available on my site to kind of help folks and encourage and motivate. So first, this says, the years teach much which the days never knew. Oh, that's very deep. It's a Ralph Waldo Emerson. The years teach much which the days never knew. But that must have spoke to me. But does that resonate with you in a caregiving way at all?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the essence of it is you have learnings in your life that you don't even you're not consciously aware of. And then when you're caregiving, you kind of draw on all that, that some of that is just like deep inside you that you pull out and apply it to help your loved ones be better. So, yeah.
I know. And then sometimes I think we're so deep in the weeds during the days that then you kind of look back and you're like, oh my gosh, look at this life I've been living, for this caregiving life. Like it goes fast. It's almost like the messier it is, the faster it goes, I feel like.
You're right. I was thinking maybe you'd be pulling out a cannoli from your jar, but no. Okay.
Oh, wait, listen, it's too close to my witching hour when I get a sweet tooth here. So love that. Well, let's learn a little bit about you here, Mark. First of all, what did life look like you before caregiving came into your life?
Yeah, I was an ambitious HR leadership development professional and did the classic go up the ladder and became an executive in human resources and leadership development training for different companies. The longest time I was with Taco Bell, which was Pepsi first and then spun off into Yum Brands, but Taco Bell for 21 years, heading up their training department, HR, recognition, leadership development, kind of all those specialty areas. So
amazing. Well, they could benefit now for sure from all of your caregiving experience to pass on to the HR teams. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. But tell us a bit then about how you woke up and realized that you had this other responsibility.
Well, my mom is who I took care of, and she was. I mean, she's an amazing woman. Always was. Took care of my sister and I in extraordinary ways. She was a kindergarten teacher her whole life, and she and my dad was a music teacher, and the two of them sacrificed so much for us, my sister and I. usually worked like multiple jobs to send us to private schools, and it just was amazing. Anyway, so my mom was sort of, showing some symptoms, of cognitive, issues and so forth. And I was the classic denier. I mean, I was like, oh yeah, it's just old age. But my sister was like, no, she's a little more pushy than me. She says, we've got to get her tested. Something is not right here. And so we did. We went to UCI Mind, which is an amazing research resource.
UCI Mind?
Yeah, University of California, Irvine, which is near where we live.
Okay.
And they have an Alzheimer's cognitive center that's like best in the country. And so we went
Amazing.
there. Yeah, it's right around the corner from where we live. And so we went there, and sure enough, my sister was right. They did all the testing and all that, and found out that my mom had both Alzheimer's and vascular dementia, both.
Oh, wow.
And so we got that diagnosis, and I was shocked and scared and all those reactions. And one of the leading doctors, neurologists in the country in this topic, basically said, because of these two dementias and some comorbidities, my mom had about 5 years to live. And she was in her mid-70s, and I thought, oh my God, 5 years, that's nothing. I was like,
yeah.
And it just hit. It's like in that moment, it hit me, and I said, this is not good. I'm going to figure this out. And being somebody who's kind of aggressive learner my whole life and pretty confident and successful, I thought, I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to prove this expert wrong. So I was like motivated to say, no, she's going to live a lot longer than that and happy. And I don't know how I'm going to do this yet, but I'm going to figure it out. And so that was kind of the genesis of the journey. And I thought, okay, I took care of her part-time. I kind of cut some corners at work. But after about 2 years, I realized, maybe a year and a half, I realized I couldn't work anymore and take care of her.
Talk about that a little bit, because I think that's something we haven't unpacked. It's like why did you know it wasn't working? Like what was happening?
I was cutting corners at work, and it wasn't good.
You mean you delaying deliverables or things?
I was like, and I was stressed trying to work and take care of my mom at the same time. And it just didn't feel like either one I was doing great. I mean, it's hard to do those things together. And I know, some people don't have a choice. They have to continue to work. But I was, blessed that I did have a choice, and I decided that, okay, I'm going to just retire super early, and I'm going to just figure this out. And thankfully, I had some savings and was able to do it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try this. I could always.
How did that conversation go? First of all, as a leader in that company, did you feel like you could be open about your caregiving experience, or did you feel like there was a stigma and there was a fear maybe that you'd be passed up for different things? But it sounds like you're already kind of at the top of the organization at this point. But what was that like? Were you hiding it, or were you kind of out in the open with it?
Oh, I think in the beginning I was hiding it. And then I realized that I had to be open with it, and because like, why is Mark, screwing up basically at work?
What happened to Mark? Yeah.
Exactly. He's like missing in action. So anyway, I was I was open, and I was not a senior leader. I was kind of second level type person, and they were my boss and their team was so good. They basically understood it completely. And in fact, helped me kind of bridge to a little bit of a retirement, program. Not as if I'd worked there until retirement, but
Can I ask you how old you were at this time?
Yeah, I was 53.
So early 50s. We have like about my age. I have a birthday coming up.
Yeah, so. Early 50s. And they were so kind. They basically said, hey, we can give you, a little bit of retirement, even though it's much earlier than our requirement. And they bridged me to some medical care. So I had medical insurance, that I was able to kind of help pay for, but they paid for a lot of it. So that was worked out. I thought, okay, let's do this thing. And that was it. I just decided and stayed home. And
okay, I want to get into that, but first I got one more question about the working days.
Sure,
were there any benefits that you're in HR? You kind of maybe you're talking about employee assistance programs, or I don't know if at that point there was employee resource groups or affinity groups or networks like that at that point. But were there any benefits that you were able to take advantage of, like before kind of the retirement and the?
Yeah, that's a great question. there were available. I didn't take advantage of it, but I mean, companies that are progressive, like a Taco Bell, a Pepsi, have kind of resources for therapy and counseling, that kind of thing. There wasn't really at that time a specific group for dementia or Alzheimer's care, but you could see a psychologist and get relatively free help and things like that. And then, of course, you can apply for a leave of absence, that kind of thing.
Was it a paid leave? Did they offer that? A paid?
No, it wasn't. It wouldn't have been a paid leave. And I knew enough about Alzheimer's at that point that I knew it wasn't going to be like, 3-month thing. It's going to be a long-term thing. So I decided not to even pursue that. I thought, okay, I'm just going to resign. But yeah, at that time, there's some help that advanced companies like a Taco Bell offer, but not a lot, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Yeah. What could you have used?
Well, ideally, paid leave of absence would be nice. Now, in this case, I think it wouldn't have helped because it would have been much longer than 6 months or whatever leave of absence might be. But it would be nice to have that. And then I think it's offered now. But for example, like Alzheimer's organizations, like National Alzheimer's, they do a lot of presentations to organizations and awareness building. And that probably is going on now, I would guess.
Well, I can tell you it is because I do a lot of that with companies.
Oh,
I don't necessarily focus on dementia and Alzheimer's, but more resources for caregivers and helping them to.
And they could have had Alzheimer's support group there. I mean, I'm now a facilitator of an Alzheimer's support group.
Where are you facilitator?
Oh, in Huntington Beach, Southern California.
Yeah.
Which isn't too far. Yeah, so I just started a few months ago. I was trained by Alzheimer's Association, and now I'm
good for you, Mark.
Oh, I love it. It's fun. Yeah. And I can see people benefiting. So if organizations had something like that, I think that would help. Because I think a lot of people probably have family members that have this, but it's, again, to your point about, it's a little bit of a stigma not to say much about it. Because, unfortunately, people who were caregiving, even part-time, have to make some shortcuts at work. And I think people are reluctant to say that. But I think if it was more open, these groups were meeting, on the campus of a business, that'd be a big plus. And I don't know how much of that's going on.
I should pay you a little bit because I feel like you're validating the corporate support package that I've put together, which is
good.
I don't do dementia support, groups specifically, but like caregiver support. I do monthly groups with these organizations, and then webinars, panel discussions, and like resources for their resource group leaders. So
I think that's great because I bet you there's a lot of employees that are kind of quietly struggling with that with family members, and they don't necessarily get a lot of visibility at work.
And yet nothing's really going to change if we don't, right? If we don't feel, and I do think it kind of starts at that upper leadership level because it's happened to you, it happens to lots of people. And just talking about that and kind of creating this space where to talk about it and realize that like life doesn't just happen, outside the hours of 9 to 5, like it's, you got to make calls, you need to do things. So that culture is changing. And then what we're finding through a lot of these employee resource groups is that their HR leaders and different corporate leaders are really tapping into this group to say like, hey, what do you all really need? And, what would be helpful to you and what benefits? And they're really changing kind of that landscape as more of a partnership. But I think that's cool. And to your point, like, I don't know that I wouldn't phrase that I cut corners as a working caregiver, but I would say that I definitely went back into low gear. Like I was not looking to take on new responsibility. I was coasting and I needed no change, to minimize that. So I could like block and tackle outside of
totally understandable. And if it was more open and supported, I think it'd be better for the person for sure. And it'd be better for the business because it wouldn't be this, what's wrong with, Elizabeth, it's like, she's not what she used to be, or Mark. And it's like, that's not good.
They're still in there. Yeah. Don't lose hope on these folks. Like, I mean, and yet I do think, like, I don't know if you believe this, Mark, but I believe like as caregivers, and we're going to kind of get into your caregiving story, but as caregivers, we learn a lot of skills that I think are transferable as employees. Problem solving and advocating and I don't know, what would you add? Are there any skills that you're like, oh, I really honed these skills as a caregiver?
Oh, totally. I mean, yeah, advocating for sure. Communicating with all the people that you do as caregiver, empathy skills, listening skill. I mean, just the communication skills that are required for an Alzheimer's patient. I mean, that gives you a lot of creativity, a lot of subtle communication skills, patience. I mean, there's all kinds of workplace skills
Yeah.
that can be
I learned
transferable.
that patience one was hard for me to learn.
I know.
That was
I
that
get,
was testing. I was like, I know I'm supposed to learn this. Like you keep giving me examples, but I'm failing. I'm failing as this. Um, well, and so you got to this point then where it was like
yeah,
work, after a year and a half, 2 years, like it's too much. I can't do work. And oh, by the way, maybe I can retire early. And your
yep,
company was working with you on that. But I imagine that transition was hard. You've worked many years of your life and you
right.
found value in your work. And it was a big part of your identity. Like, what was that like?
Well, it wasn't as bad as you might think
Okay.
because I mean, I've always been very kind of goal driven, mission driven. And I had a really clear mission in my mind when I decided to leave work and take care of my mom full time. I wanted her to live longer and happier than anybody on the planet. And that
Mm,
was my mission. And that was like total focus. And that's kind of what I've always been like. Okay, focus on something, make it work and achieve it. And so that was my mission and everything I did personally. And then, eventually I needed caregiving help with home agencies that helped me I was driven and my team was driven toward those objectives. So, and
amazing.
that kind of helped me. So it felt like even though it was my mom and I loved her and I did amazing things to help her, it was like work. I mean, it was like, okay, this is the mission right now. I'm
Yeah,
going to
it's like
help her.
the biggest strategic project that you ever got.
Exactly.
It was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but they gave me this
Yeah.
thing and gosh darn it. And then there's, of course, the emotional side of it
Yeah.
as well. But I love that you applied kind of your
Yeah.
professional things and and I do sometimes I shared it with caregivers, like
Yeah.
you're managing a really big project. Like it is, especially working caregivers can kind of make
Yeah.
that. And so
Mhm.
you're going to need a team of people. You're going to have to do a
Right.
gap analysis of what you don't have and fill in a little bit. So talk about like, how did you get started? Now you're full-time Mark
Right.
caregiver. Maybe you didn't
Yeah.
even call yourself that. You're like, mom's my mission.
Exactly. It was my mission.
You
And
moved
by the
in
way,
with her, or did you move in with mom or vice versa?
I live close by,
Okay.
and so I just kind of moved in to the house where she lived in, and I was like, okay, so basically, I kind of stepped back and I said, yeah, the mission. This is my mission, and by the way, as important as my work was for 30 years, this is even more important. So not only did I have a great mission, it was the most important mission of my life, and it was really clear. So I thought, okay. So I started taking care of her myself. My sister helped me also, but I was kind of the number one kind of care person.
The primary
And
caregiver is what we say.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, primary caregiver. And I was working it, and I started figuring out that if I'm going to have her live longer and better and happier, I got to learn some stuff about Alzheimer's. And I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about caregiving, nothing. So I started like reading and talking to people and everything I could. Alzheimer's, I was on their hotline, Alzheimer's Association, like 3 times a day asking questions. I mean, I do have a hunger to learn, and I was learning fast. And all of a sudden, I was like realizing that there are some amazing things that I want to try with my mom to accomplish the mission of longer, happier. And I don't have the headspace, the physical, I was just tired and I couldn't focus on those things when I was taking care of
Mm.
every need she has, which I wanted to.
And the
So then,
home and trying to feed yourself and
oh yeah,
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 yeah.
everything. Yeah. And so it just hit me one day. It's like, I'm going to need help. And if I'm going to get help, I'm going to be a better caregiver. And all of a sudden it hit me, my whole history and working history was about leadership. So leadership development, I coached executives on their leadership. And I thought, I've got to be shift from caregiver to care leader. And just like
Mm.
hit me, like woke up like a bong. It was like one of the biggest insights I ever had. So I said, okay, I got to be a care leader. And then I remembered, it was like, I remembered that my mom had long-term care insurance that I bought for her many years ago because my dad died very young. He died like 52.
Mm.
And somehow some insurance guy just sold me get long-term care insurance for your mom. It's going to really help you. I didn't know anything about it. I thought, sure, why not? Okay, so this thing was like out there, never used, and I thought, I gotta figure out if I can find this thing, dust it off the policy, and sure enough, I did. And yeah, okay, so it'll help me some to hire these caregivers at home. And I started just figuring out how do I do that? Called agencies, and you started the process of finding home caregivers to help me with the daily living things. And
I bet your
so,
leadership and HR training came in great when you were hiring people.
well, it did eventually. In the beginning, I was clueless on anything about it, and I hired some not great caregivers in the very beginning. But the good thing about HR, we know about not only hiring, but we know about firing. so
Thank you
I
for
was
playing. Goodbye. Yes. Yeah.
exactly. I
Yeah.
was pretty quick, and pretty soon after maybe 6 months of finding not great caregivers, it sort of hit me what I needed in a caregiver. I needed, number one, I needed somebody with experience with Alzheimer's or dementia. And then number two is I needed two things became really important to me as I read and researched. One was safety, because I kind of figured out that my mom's going to live much longer than 5 years, which was my goal. I got to keep her safe, because if she falls or chokes or just, many Alzheimer's patients are prone to medical issues in lots of areas. And so safety was number one. I needed a caregiver that was just made that a priority. And number two is I realized that I had to do some really creative things around stimulating her, keeping her physically active, nutrition, supplement, all kinds of things that I was learning about that will help her stay healthy.
What were some of those activities that you were trying on different things? Like, what were some of the ones that stuck?
Well, it's like, again, once I found some good caregivers, they helped me figure these things out, which was what made them great. Like one of the first caregivers I hired said, okay, let's do some drawing. And my mom fell in love with drawing, and that was stimulating to her and comforting to her for her whole journey. I mean, for 12 years after that. So that things like that, they play games with her, not like board games, but like fun games. My mom was a kindergarten teacher, so she always had a good imagination. And so they played, she had stuffed animals, and they played just like fun things with stuffed animals.
Play-Doh. I might use Play-Doh with my mom, or Connect Four was kind of a board game, but yeah. You do have to get creative. Yes.
Oh yeah. And my mom loved creative things, and you could see her just smiling and having fun. And I loved that when I saw that. And things like music. My mom, was a child of the 50s. And so all the old Frank Sinatra stuff, big bands, one of the caregivers figured that out pretty quickly and played it on her iPhone. And my mom would just like smile and, shake her hips, it was just fun. And so, yeah, so I figured out that safety is number one. And then after that, some people who are creative and knew how to have fun and were compassionate and loving and just made my mom happy. And I think that's all those things, as well as nutrition and physical activity and physical therapy regularly, all those things kind of helped her live longer. Yeah. And I think, and I can't, I'm not a scientist. I can't measure what contributed to what, but as I was reading, I mean, all these things had quote unquote some evidence that lend themselves to longevity and happiness. And I thought, hey,
it's likely not one thing, right? Like it's the combination
exactly.
of a bunch of different, and your intention, like your intention kind of going into it of the mission for mom. Was there any kind of secrets about, like, because I know one of the things I hear a lot from caregivers that I coach is that the turnover of the professional staff is so large. Like, do you have any secrets on retention?
Oh, totally. Well, that was really important to me, because I knew, because I could just see it. When my mom met new people, she would get agitated and anxious. And if somebody was familiar to her, she would be calmer and happier. And so one of my goals was find these amazing caregivers, which I applied, to your point, a lot of HR. I did a lot of, kind of professional level interviewing of these caregivers with good, method that I learned as an executive. And then once I found these people, I then just did everything I could to keep them. They were through agencies, primarily, especially in the beginning. I ended up having a few private folks later on, but I didn't pay any more than market rates. And I kept, once I landed, I call them the big five. There were five caregivers that I ended up, kind of finding midway through my mom's Alzheimer's journey. And they stayed, all five stayed with us full time from mid to the end of her life, which was about, depending on the person, 6 to 8 years.
Wow.
And I had no turnover of any of those five people in 6 to 8 years, did not pay them any more than market rates. But what I did, on kind of the secrets are, just really kind of, first of all, I told them about the mission. I mean, that was that their mission was not just, putting time in. Their mission was to help my mom live significantly longer and happier than possible. And they loved that mission. It's like, okay, wow, that's pretty important. I said, yeah, it is important. And so that was number one. Second is I would always engage them in their ideas. It was like I needed their brain, not just their experience. So if they came up with an idea, I always celebrated that and recognized that was something to stimulate my mom or have fun with it. And then I would tell them that I'm going to share this idea with the other caregiver team to encourage them to do the same thing. And they liked it. It's like, oh, everybody's using my idea.
It gives them like a bigger purpose. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they feel recognized and important and engaged because their ideas are important enough for me to celebrate it with other people. And then I try to treat them like family. When we go out on outings, I would do some kind of recognition for our caregivers, whether it was a birthday or a celebration. So they really felt like part of the family was the idea. And I think that's went into motivating them so that they wouldn't leave. And that was really important. Once I've hired somebody that was a keeper, I figured out how to keep them. So
yeah. Amazing.
Because any change with everybody, again, people are different, but most Alzheimer's dementia patients don't like new people, new change. And so this is really important to me, that to find these amazingly creative and competent caregivers and who just showed so much love for my mom and keep them. and I did. And I did, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing some of that secrets that people can kind of apply. I'm just curious, did mom ever get on your nerves?
No.
Oh, wow. You've got a good temperament, I think, Mark.
Well, yeah, thank you. But again, it was, I can't go into all of it, but she was just such an amazing mom for so many years with my sister and I both worked so hard, and always had time for us. And I remember she would like drill me on my spelling and vocabulary when I was young, and just was she had so much energy and support. And just people, like at her funeral, people would say how much, when she walked into a room, her smile would like light up the room. And the kids that she had in her class, came, and it's like, your mom influenced, Johnny or Janie so much, and now they're successful because they got their start with your mom. It's from kindergarten.
Oh, I get it. My aunt was a kindergarten teacher, and my uncle was a band leader, and they were married, and their funerals had the longest lines of all of these, but I love, that's one of the nice things about a funeral, frankly, is kind of like learning all these things about, you already knew she was spectacular, but then you're like, whoa, she's touched all these people's lives. And but when you really hear it, you definitely know. Well, I'm curious too, like this, you achieved the mission, right?
Yeah. She ended up living almost 13 years, 12 years longer. Well, 12 years total. So more than twice what the
5-year was the.
And get this is even more interesting. So again, that's maybe another podcast on medical mistakes, but my mom would have lived even longer. Who knows how much? But because she was in the hospital for a little touch of some congestive heart failure that she was recovering from and about to be sent home. But anyway, I won't give you all the details, but she ended up getting a wrong surgery, a procedure, not a major surgery, kind of a procedure that wasn't that serious. Anyway, long story short is the doctor did the wrong surgery in the wrong place, which led to an infection, which led to sepsis, which killed her. And if she had not done this mistake, and it was clearly a medical mistake, if that had not happened, she might have lived, who knows how long after, which
I'm sorry
again,
that happened.
beats us 5 years. We blew the 5 years away. So, but
it reminds me of, it is a horrible thing. But, and yet I don't want to take away the win, which is like you went in with a mission and you achieved that mission. And I almost feel like, do you remember the movie Pretty Woman? where
Yeah.
she like goes into the store and because she wanted to spend all this money and they didn't want her. And she says, goes back with all the bags and says, big mistake, big mistake. I almost want you to like go back to that doctor and be like, look at this big mistake here. Look at all these years and all these photos and memories.
Well, yeah, my background is Sicilian. I don't think I want to see that doctor for his sake.
Who says that, first of all? Like you were already, dementia is not a death sentence. There are many examples, right, your mom's included, of like people who have lived a very long and happy life after a diagnosis.
Right. Oh, yeah. No, it was happy. She was happy, no doubt about it. You could see it in her face. She would dance with our caregivers and just smile, and we had fun together. We go out on our outings. So yeah, no, she was happy, but because we created the right environment for her and did the right things and gave her nutrition and little things like, I mean, this is another interesting thing because I've heard people tell me, because I've been in some Alzheimer's support group, and I'm also on the board of UCI Mind and stuff. So
nice.
So they people have said, I didn't know you could get all these services at home. I said, yeah, we had physical therapy come for my mom every week for many years. That was quote unquote preventative.
Did you ask for it? Did you have to ask for it?
Yeah. Medicare.
You have to advocate for it. Like, I mean, I find that they're not going to be like, oh, your person needs physical, not,
right.
But if you ask for it, then it's like, I did that recently with my brother. I'm like, he's got sciatica, this and that. Oh yeah, right. We can write him a PT.
Oh yeah. No, definitely. And the person that we used, it came to our house every week, sometimes twice a week for years and years, figured out how to, I'm sure he was honest, but figure out how to get Medicare to pay. And it was so important to her continue to walk, because she walked to the very end. And a lot that doesn't happen with a lot of Alzheimer's patients. They end up being bedridden or wheelchair ridden. And that was not the case. She could, with a walker for safety, she could walk until the very end of her life, because I think of all this physical therapy to keep her strong and active, and all that can be done at home. You don't have to be in a facility. No. We had speech therapy come in the beginning when starting to lose her speech. Didn't solve it, but we tried. And we had the dentist come to the house, mobile dentist. They're out there.
Mobile everything is out there.
Like, yeah. You're right. And people are like, really? I thought
now that's probably not, you had to pay out of pocket for the dentist, likely. And unless they took dental insurance. Yeah.
Well, I had some dental insurance for her that paid. So that, I mean, so all these things can be done. Most of them are paid for, but, haircutter, no, that's not paid for by Medicare, of course, but almost everything, speech, physical therapy, nurses can come to your house, doctors, even there are doctors that come to your house now. You have to find them, but there are some great doctors that are mobile. And so, it's all those things. You don't have to be, in a facility to get amazing services that extend people's lives and health and happiness. So
I mean, you were aging in place is kind of the key term there. And then while you're doing all of this, Mark, and I love the term care leader. Your mom's care leader. How are you not losing yourself? Like, what are you doing to help your own health and happiness?
Well, it's kind of, I think of these things. It's a great question and really important, because one of the foundations of care leadership, we can talk about it a little later, but I'm writing a book about this. But one of them is, the first pillar is self-care, because if you're not sharp, healthy, and excited about being a care leader, you're not going to do a great job, and your loved one will probably not live longer and happier. So that's number one. And so I think of that in two categories. I think of internal re-energizers or renewers, and external re-energizer renewers for the caregiver. So on the internal side,
what were yours? I'm curious.
Yeah, on the internal side, I really tapped into this mission and this passion, and I come from again, sort of my grandparents both were Sicilian. They came as immigrants to this country as kids. My grandfather came over to this country when he was 12 years old on a boat all by himself to make a good life for his family. And I keep thinking, if he could do that, then I can do this. I mean, it's like, right?
You come from strong leaders.
Right. If people make that much of a sacrifice at 12 years old, this should be a piece of cakes. And then I think about that, and I think about the mission and how much my mom did. So that's an internal motivator as one of them. The other one is my faith. I prayed a lot and called on God to help me. And I thought, and there's a great book called Holy Moments, which
Okay.
is which is interesting. It's not about caregiving particularly, but it's about just getting in touch with kind of a holy moment that sort of captures your energy and imagination. And I had many of those with my mom. It's like when she would smile, I would like, this is
Aw.
all worth it. This is all worth it. And so I would like, those are internal things that would keep me energized and motivated. Externally, I went to a therapist pretty regularly during this journey to help me, kind of process this and help,
Good.
kind of keep me grounded. I did that. When I had time, I would at least once a day, I'd go for a short walk around the block just to keep physically, exercise. I knew important was social connection. So I would, call a friend pretty regularly, and they were so supportive. And so I had a sort of external re-energizers as well as these internal re-energizers.
So
And I think
good.
that kept me focused and kept me positive. There's a great concept around this that I think is important. And it's a guy named Larry Sen. He's a leadership writer guru. He has a concept called the mood elevator. And basically, you got to check your mood. If your mood is kind of in the lower rungs of the elevator, lower buttons, like you're kind of down, depressed, you're blaming other people for things. So why is this happening to me? Then you're not going to be a great care leader. But if you're higher on the elevator and your things, and you're capturing, so I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm, excited about what I can do for my mom. Those are high in the mood elevator. You're going to be a much better
Yeah.
leader.
Even
So
this sucks and I've accepted it. Like that is
yeah, yeah,
that is a intention.
yeah. So if you kind of do a gut check and say, oh, I'm kind of down in the dumps about this. Woe is me. Then you got to do something to re-energize yourself,
Yeah,
whether it's
elevate.
external, elevate to get a higher in a mood elevator for your own health and happiness, but more importantly, even for the person you're caring for. So.
Yeah, because it's a partnership. It's like it's a lot of things. Well, I love that you're putting all your wisdom in a book. Tell us about your book.
Well, yeah, it's so funny. After my mom passed, as people know who've had their loved one pass, your brain is spinning and you're just anyway. So I was like, okay, I gotta get focused on something here, and I didn't think I want to go back to work quite yet. And
Not
so I thought,
once you leave, it's hard to go back to the
it is hard to
corporate
go
world.
back.
Yeah.
And it was like, I got a mission now. I had two missions after my mom passed. One is Alzheimer's support and helping others who are going through this journey. And the second is this medical mistake thing. It's like, I'm going to try to, get involved with trying to help people who are victims of medical negligence. So those are my kind of two
Are there
missions.
agencies for that? Like if somebody's got like issues because we
Well,
mentioned it, is there something I
yeah.
should link to?
It's a good question. I can't think of any. The group I was kind of got connected with was the Consumer Watchdog Group. They have chapters all over the country, but there's an LA chapter that I linked up with, and I'm working with some folks there who are kind of full-time employees to advocate in Sacramento, which is California's capital, to help legislators change the laws around this to make again, this is another whole podcast, but right now there's not a lot of accountability to doctors and hospitals for medical mistakes. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but I'm trying to help this group change laws in California around that. We've had even in a couple of quick years, we've had some successes to change some things about that, but it's got a long way to go before doctors will really, and hospitals will feel really accountable legally and financially for mistakes they make. It's not where it needs to be yet.
Yeah.
But yeah. So those are the two kind of missions that I have: Alzheimer's support and helping with medical negligence. But anyway, so I did some podcasts for UCI Mind, which I was connected with through my mom's care. I just happened to know the director, and anyway, I was talking to her one day, and she said, "Well, you're doing some interesting things for your mom. Why don't you do we have this podcast series at University of California Irvine UCI Mind Center." And I said, okay. Anyway, I did a couple of these podcasts for them, and people came out of the woodwork saying, "You got some amazing ideas, Mark. Why don't you write a book?" And I thought, a book? I didn't even, I don't know how to write a book. so anyway, I started one day, this is like 2 years ago.
But you are an aggressive learner, so yeah. And somebody gave you this
learner. You're right. Yeah. So it's like, so I just sat at my computer one day and just like started writing, and then a little bit more the next day. Anyway, 6 months later, I had a book.
Yeah. Was it therapeutic for you?
It was really therapeutic. I mean, I got a lot of, it sort of went back and forth between this is interesting. I did a lot of amazing things. I should feel good about myself. To, oh my God, I miss my mom. And it's like all kinds of things. And then this is going to help people, I think. It's like, so anyway, I finished this book, and now I'm in the process of working to get it published. And I have an agent that's helping me find publishers and stuff. So it's got a ways to go before it's out there, but I'm optimistic.
It's been born, and it's on the path. That's so exciting.
It's finished, and it's edited and all that. Now I just need somebody to publish it. So
when it does get published, we'll just let me know, and we'll update the show notes. The great thing about podcasts is people find them at various points in their life, and so maybe the book has been published by the time they're listening to this, and we can indefinitely post
that.
No,
I'm excited about it, because it's like it's a combination of sort of a handbook, how to, based on my experience, and it's also a personal Alzheimer's journey story about my mom's background, the Sicilian thing, and then who my mom was, and all the angst about it. And there's the last section of the book is all about this hospital stay with this medical malpractice. And I ended up, this is during COVID, kind of the first big wave of COVID. And I figured out nobody was allowed in the hospital during this time. And I, through my sister's pushiness, which she originally, got my mom diagnosed. She figured out how to push somebody to get us into the hospital. And I was in the hospital for the month that my mom was in the hospital with all these problems. And nobody else was in the hospital. There was no guests at all allowed. And I was like a rock star in that hospital all by myself.
It matters. It matters. So we had a show where a woman, Mary Daniels, became a dishwasher to see her husband in a care facility, care community. During COVID. But there is an act, by the way, on the table, the Caregivers Act in the House and Senate right now, that we're trying to get, to advocate for this very type of thing, that there's a primary person that's allowed access and the reasons why. So I will link to that in the show notes too, so people can learn. And then another thing I wanted to mention is when you get your book published, don't forget about All's Authors. You are definitely could be a candidate be a part of All's Authors, which is where a community of dementia and Alzheimer's related, and they have a podcast as well. So I love
their podcast. I've listened to them. They're great. Yeah,
they're a fellow Whole Care Network podcaster. So
nice.
tight with those ladies. I love them. So
thank you for reminding me. Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
So I'm excited about the book and the experience, and so it's a journey helping people with Alzheimer's support. But I love it. Really it feels very fulfilling.
You're definitely mission driven, and it's paying off, and I think it's making you happy and healthier in that process. So I appreciate you sharing all that. On the self-care notes, let's get your thoughts on some of the prompts in the journal. So first question I have for you, Mark, is it says on one side of the page, it says, what's one habit that you're trying to subtract from your life? But then on the other one, it's one habit you're trying to add to your life. So is there a habit that you're trying to subtract or add?
Let's see. Well, I'm, being a Sicilian, I'm addicted to Italian pastries and gelato. So
lemon gelato, please. That's my favorite.
So I've got to kind of work on that. That's a subtract, so I can stay healthy.
Or in moderation, maybe just the child cup size, like your mama had.
Child cup sprinklers.
Yeah.
So that's kind of it. I would say just stay healthy, and I can get addicted to sweets pretty easily. So
what does self-care look like for you now? I'm just curious.
Well, it's interesting because, those of the listeners who've been through, a loved one dying, and especially since my mom and I were so close, it's still hard. It's been 3 years, and yet it's still hard. And so trying to stay active with Alzheimer's support and doing all this work, and then also just sort of taking baby steps to all the things that I couldn't do when you take care of a loved one full time for 12 years. I didn't travel at all, no vacation. So I'm traveling again. I've been to Italy twice in the last 3 years. Hawaii. So I'm doing a lot more travel. My sister and I both, because we both sacrifice quite a bit. So we're traveling now, and I'm trying to resurrect the social life. I'm I'm a single guy, and it's like dating again. Oh my God, what's that like? So we're starting to date again, and it's just getting back to living life and celebrating all the wonderful things. And as our grief slowly gets withers a little bit. So I mean, it'll always be there, but it's not as severe as it was in the beginning. So.
Yeah. Well, yes. Good for you for kind of recognizing all of
Yeah.
that. And life
Right.
after caregiving is definitely a stage of
Yeah.
caregiving. It's
Yes.
got its own things, and it's, the grief never really ends. I feel like
No.
it's 10 years almost since my dad passed, and
Right.
it just is kind of like found a little cozy space in my body. Like it's just part of who I am now. And it's,
Yes.
I can definitely leak and flare up too. So what's the last great book or the last book that you read that you'd recommend? It sounds like you're a big reader.
Yeah, well, I'll give you two titles that are excellent that are connected to this topic. One is Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is a big time bestseller. It actually influenced me a lot with my strategy with my mom, because his book is all about how many, many little things can add up to something big.
It's like that ripple effect. I've read the book. I recommend it as well. Yeah.
I mean, the idea is like, okay. I mean, his analogy is, you put grains of sand, keep adding grains of sand, and it, eventually, things topple over. It's like my mom's care was the same thing. There was no cure for Alzheimer's. We know that. No silver bullet. But all these things I tried with her, nutrition and supplements and exercise and stimulation and art, all I think added little grains of sand to help her live a lot longer and happier.
Yeah. And grains of sand for you too, like the little self-care things that you were doing for you.
Yeah, totally.
Have that effect. What's the other book?
The other book is called Sensitive, and it's by Grandeman and Solo, the two authors, and it's about highly responsive or highly sensitive people. And they talk about it. It's a very interesting book. They talk about three characteristics that are really important. And I read the book. I look for those in my caregivers too. The three things are highly creative, highly sensitive people are highly creative, highly compassionate, empathetic, and they are sensory. They're tuned into the sensory observation kind of. And those three, I figured out those three things are very important in amazing superstar caregivers. So one is you want somebody to be creative, and I found these people with kind of interesting games and creative exercises with my mom and all that. You want them to be empathetic and compassionate, because that's how you connect. My mom couldn't talk, so they had to figure out how to communicate. And you can only do that by being really a good listener, very empathetic, compassionate with my mom. And so that was something that was important. And then sensory observation is interestingly very important because you think about it, you want somebody caregiving for your loved one that is tuned in to observing them and changes in them. Okay, something looks off, Mark. Yeah, cues. I think they're not feeling well, or something's off with them. And observe those things. And doctors too. Again, we didn't talk much about that, but the extended care team is doctors and physicians and others. And you want your doctor to be tuned in to observations about your loved one in a medical world. And you want them to be creative in their care. And I can give you some book has some examples about a creative approach to medical care that worked.
I'm going to definitely check it out. And we'll, of course, we're going to link to this and all the other resources that you've shared.
I would suggest those two books. So Sensitivity by Grandeman Solo, and then Atomic Habits. Those are just awesome books, and they do connect with caregiving a little, it's a little bit of an,
because caregiving is life. Yes.
Exactly. You're right.
And you're a care leader. So you're leading. It's amazing. Such good wisdom and insights, Mark. I really appreciate, everything that you've shared today. And I can see how your people got really connected to the mission, and connected to your mission now. So that's it's very magnetic, and it comes across in our conversation. Is there anything else that you were like, oh man, we can't wrap this up without saying this? And then, or like, how do people get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
Yeah. Well, get in touch with me. I'm on LinkedIn. So just kind of reach out. There's probably a lot of Mark Wilsons.
I'll link to it.
Oh, yeah, okay. And then you just look for Newport Beach is where I live, and you'll see Taco Bell sort of on the on the profile. But yeah, LinkedIn is the best way to reach me. I love to connect with people. And then the last thing I would say is there are caregivers out there that are listening, I'm sure, that are struggling with their role. I'm kind of getting a little sentimental here. So I would say,
No, it's all good.
just don't give up. What you're doing is so important. And especially if you're doing this at home. I know a lot of people, for good reason, put their loved one in a facility, but if you're doing this at home, it's extra hard and extra important, but it's worth it because there's nothing like this. You are helping your loved one in their biggest moment of need in their entire life. They need you now more than ever, and you can make a huge difference. Just stay focused, get the help you need for your own care, and maybe direct care for your loved one too. But just get the help you need, and just know you're doing the right thing, and it's worth the energy and effort. And you'll be grateful, and they'll be grateful.
Amazing.
They may not be able to tell you how grateful they are because of the dementia, but they are. I know that. So
Yeah. Well said, Mark. Thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing all of this with everybody.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Hello, podcast listener. If you're caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's or dementia, you don't want to miss All's Authors podcast, Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia. I'm your host, Marianne Shuko, a registered nurse, author, and dementia daughter. In each episode, I interview one of our 300-plus authors about their personal dementia story and why they chose to write about it, sharing intimate details and painfully obtained knowledge to help you on your own journey. We share a variety of stories across all diagnoses and from a range of caregiving experiences. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform and the Whole Care Network. Remember, you are not alone. One can sing a lonely song, but we chose to form a choir and create harmony. Find us at allsauthors.com. See you soon.
Thanks for joining us today on the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast on the Whole Care Network. As always, show notes that accompany today's episode can be found on my website, happyhealthycaregiver.com. Just look under the podcast menu for today's episode image, and that will take you to the page with the links and information we spoke about today. You'll also find other resources on the website, along with links to purchase the Just For You Daily Self-Care Journal. When you purchase from my website, you'll get a signed copy and for a limited time, free shipping. If you've enjoyed what you heard today, consider subscribing to the show on your podcast platform. It really helps other family caregivers find the podcast, and you'll automatically receive our bi-weekly shows in your podcast listening queue. Maybe while you're subscribing, consider leaving a 5-star rating and review, or just simply talk it up on your social channels. Let's stay connected. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Happy Healthy Caregiver. And until we meet again, please take care of you.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.